Hi everyone, welcome to today's training module. We're going to be covering paint systems and failure, and overall we're just going to be covering our product lines and paint in general. So I'm going to walk us through a bunch of different aspects of it, and this video is really for anyone in the painting business. So as far as the Colorcraft team goes, really everyone short of the accountant really needs to know about the product lines and just paint, which is our only real input other than labor in the business. So whether you're the general manager, an operations manager, especially sales managers, you really need to know your products and what to apply where and when, and being able to use that as a selling feature in the business. So what we're going to cover today is by no means a comprehensive understanding of everything there is to know about paint in general, but it's more of an overview and a prompt to continue learning and to build relationship with your local paint store and learn more and more about product knowledge so that we not only look more competent to our customers, but we really are, and we actually are giving the right solutions for the painting needs of the client. So I'm here at the Sherwin Williams paint store, my local store, and I'm in the warehouse right now. So I've just assembled all the different products, and we're going to go through all the different things. So I'm going to walk you, in this video we're going to talk specifically about exterior painting, but there's a lot of similarities in the product lines for interior painting, and I'll let you go into that as you go on your product knowledge journey. But in this video we're going to cover the different product lines in terms of quality, the lower end line all the way to the higher end line, specifically for Sherwin Williams, which is our core supplier at Colorcraft. The main reason we have a core supplier in the business is you build a relationship with the store. You're going to ultimately get the best long-term pricing year after year as you do more volume in those stores. So here we are at Sherwin Williams. So we're going to cover that product line all the way from the lowest end, which is still pretty darn good, up to the highest end products. We're going to talk about Sheen Levels, so the different, basically gloss levels of different paints. We're also going to talk about stains versus paints. What's the difference? We're going to talk about transparencies when it comes to stain, and we're also going to talk about oil versus latex or water-based products and what's the difference and when to use what. So let's jump right into it. First things, paint products. So with Sherwin Williams, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, five products that we're going to cover in order and when to use what. First of which is the lower end side of the brand, which we use sometimes at Colorcraft, which is A100. So this is a flat A100. We use this sometimes, but it's typically not the go-to. Colorcraft is more positioned as a higher end brand, so we're usually using the upper end products or the mid-range at least. The often quoted product, which is kind of the mid-range, is Super Paint, and this is also an excellent product. Usually we will quote using Super Paint, and then we'll offer an upgrade. So if you're a sales rep watching this video, typically you're quoting Super Paint, and then you're in the options, an upgrade section of your estimate, you'll have an upgrade for Duration, which is the next product. Here we got Duration. This is my go-to. This is what I often, for myself, for my division, I usually paint. We actually paint with Duration. So I'm trying to upsell the client to this product because we honestly want to give long-lasting, amazing finishes. This is going to have a good color retention in this product, and it's going to last a long time. It's just a high-quality paint, and we have really good pricing with it at Sherwin Williams. The next higher-end line, which is actually quite comparable to Duration, is Resilience. However, Resilience has exceptional moisture resistance. So what does that mean? It means this is a really good product to use and upsell during the pre-season, so early season like March and April, specifically March when there's a lot of moisture in the air, or late season like September, October, even November. Good on the exterior, you can use Resilience because it's formulated to deal with that, to deal with higher moisture in the air, humidity content, all that stuff. The last product is Emerald, and Emerald is just the cream of the crop. You'd have to check your pricing, whether it makes sense to realistically use it, but it's just another amazing product, really well formulated, best technology. rarely use emerald. I don't think I've used it even this year. But ask about emerald if you want to upsell it, because you can charge more for it if your customers are really competent in their paint knowledge, which sometimes high-end clients know their stuff because they've dealt with a lot of home maintenance in their life and they like high-end everything. So with the Colorcraft team, we are kind of catering to that higher-end client. So you might end up selling some emerald. So recap that. Resilience is good for high humidity, early season, late season. Duration's kind of the upsell product for Colorcraft. Super Paint is kind of the mid-range product, which is what we quote with usually to give a really good pricing for the original quote, and then you can upsell the higher price. And then A100, still a good product, but it's the lowest end brand, exterior brand at Sherwin Williams. Next thing I want to cover is what the difference. We're going to go into stain products. First off, though, what is the difference between stain and paint, and how would you know what's on a house and what not, and when do you use what? So most of the time, people will have paint on their siding. However, one way to identify if you got stain or paint on the siding, so say you're a salesperson and you're doing an estimate, and you go to the home and you're trying to identify visually, is this stain or paint on this house? The easy tell signs is that a house that has been stained with a solid color stain, so I guess I'll get into that in a sec. Well, maybe I'll get into that right now, actually. Stain has 4 transparencies. So stain can come in solid color stain, which means that it looks just like paint. It's got that solid color. It's got no see-through it. And I'll go into the benefits of why I use that versus paint then. But the next one would be a semi-transparent. So it has a lot of color, but you can see through the grain of the wood. Like you can see if you're staining some wood siding, you can see that there's like the wood grain behind it, and it's a whole style. It's kind of like that chalet look, or like a cabin style of look. So you're bringing a lot of color into the wood and you're protecting the wood, but you can still see the wood grain and the imperfections of the wood, which is very aesthetically pleasing in my opinion. The next one would be a semi-solid, or a transparent stain, which is just very little coloring, and it's really just a protective layer, and you can pretty much see all the way through the wood with like the slightest bit of coloring potentially, or you might even use a natural tone, which has almost no coloring, and it's just this penetrating quality. So the difference between paint and stain has really a lot to do with penetration. Paint is more of a product that sits on the surface of the material that you're working with. So whether it's metal or wood, you put the paint on it, it kind of sits on top of that. So that's why we have to make sure we prepare these surfaces so that the paint will actually adhere and stick to the surface. Versus a stain, whether it's a semi-transparent, a solid color stain, or a transparent stain, all of them have a penetrating nature. They penetrate into the wood, and it goes all the way through. So the reason we would want to use, so if you're looking at a house, often what you'll notice with stains is that they don't tend to peel. They kind of just fade away over time. Regardless of whether it's solid color, semi-transparent, or transparent, they'll just have a fading nature. So the color retention over time will just kind of fade off, and it won't peel away because it's penetrated into the wood. Whereas paints tend to peel off. So if you go to a house and there's just peeling all over the house, that's basically the paint is peeling off of the surface of the material. So that's an easy way to know whether it's been a paint or a stain when you go and do an estimate at a house, or whether you're a painter and you arrive at a house, just to know what the current product is that it's on the house. Another thing to be aware of with paint and stain is that because of that penetrating nature, you can't really apply a stain over a paint for long-term benefit. That's not going to work well, because if you have a paint on a wall and then you come and try and stain the house, the stain's not going to be able to penetrate into the wood because the paint is just kind of a shell blocking the penetration. However, you can do it the other way. So if there's a stain on a house and the client now, say it's a semi-transparent stain or a solid color stain, and the client wants to put paint over top of it, the paint can adhere to the surface of the semi-transparent stain. So it doesn't work both ways. That's why it's important to know what is currently on the house. So I'll just kind of recap that. Stain cannot really go over top of paint regardless of the transparency, whereas paint can go over the stain. It doesn't work both ways. So that's kind of the difference between paint and stain. And once again, this is a really big overview. You're going to want to really build a strong relationship with your local sales rep, or if you're a painter, same thing, knowing the local rep so you can ask product-oriented questions as you go along in your development as a painter, or your development as a salesperson, or the general manager, who is ideally well-tuned to all of this because they're the ones making the big calls. So yeah, we've kind of talked about the 5 paint products. So I'm going to go into some of the stain products. There's 2 lines of stain at Sherwin Williams. So one of them is called Scapes. So this one here is a semi-transparent Scapes. And then right here we have a solid color stain from Scapes. So once again, yeah, there's different transparencies. The solid color looks like a paint, but it's a stain. Whereas the semi-transparent has that transparency showing the grain of the wood look, but adding the color that the client wants. A lot more difficult to predict a semi-transparent stain in terms of what expectations with the client than it is to do solid color. That's kind of the benefit of solid color, is you know exactly what you're going to get. Semi-transparent, you never know exactly what you're going to get, because how that stain interacts with that type of wood can change the exact look of it. So it's always important, if you're a salesperson watching this video, to acknowledge the expectation setting part of that with clients when we do stains, especially the semi-transparent stains. You'll also notice here that there are 2 things going on. So this one is a water-based stain, right? Water base. Versus this guy is an oil base. And, oh no, these are both water-based stains, but I'll use this as an example. This little guy down here, the little skeleton, if you can see it, that shows that it's an oil-based product, which is a more toxic product. Why would you use an oil-based versus a water-based? Specifically with stain products and transparent stain products, the oil-based is almost, and even with paint, you can have oil-based stain or water-based stain, but the oil-based stain or paint is going to have a longer lasting finish. It's ultimately a better product in terms of the house, but it has a more toxic nature to it. So how much do we really want to be using it? That's variable. But typically with decks and fences and stuff, and you're using semi-transparent stains and varnishes and stuff, an oil base is the way you want to go. However, with larger projects and just doing big houses and stuff, I tend to use water-based. It's just better for the human, the human side of the project. And the technology is getting a lot better year over year in terms of the water-based products. But paint in general, or the history of paint, has come from oil, and it just has this deep, penetrating, like long-lasting finish to it. Like some of these oil products can last for a long time. So it's that's the debate: is the toxicity, which is the human aspect, versus the actual finish, which is why we're in the paint industry, is to give a beautiful, long-lasting finish and save the clients money over time, ultimately. So that's Scapes. The other stain product that Sherwin Williams carries is Super Deck. Don't be deceived. Super Deck can be used on, it doesn't have to just be on decks, it can be on houses as well. But that's their other line. I like Super Deck more, probably. I like the quality of it more. But they're both great products. And once again, you'll want to learn more about the differences between the two and when to apply what. But I've got a whole bunch of the different Super Decks here to show you. So let's start with, this is our solid color stain for Super Deck, and this is a water-based solid color stain, right? So that means it's got that solid color, it looks just like paint. The next one in the line would be a semi-solid color Super Deck. So it's got a really strong color, but you can slightly see through that product. You can see that grain of the wood behind it a little bit. It's a slight bit of transparency, and this one is also a water-based semi-solid color. Next, we have semi-transparent Super Deck. And so this has a bit more transparency, and this one is also a water base. And lastly, we've got transparent Super Deck. So this one has very little coloring that you're going to get, and you're going to really see the beautiful wood finish behind it, and it's really just protecting it. In this one, I don't even think they have water-based. It has to be oil-based because there's no coloring in there. There's just the penetration, and the product is just oil. I don't think there is an equivalent. And you can tell that it's an oil-based because of that. So this one is probably going to have to give you a very nice, long-lasting finish. It's probably overall going to be better than water-based, and especially for decks and fences, oil-based is really good because these are places that get a lot of moisture. Decks and fences don't typically get longer than a 2-year lifespan, just in general anymore. So you definitely want to set those expectations with clients about how long products are realistically going to last and not overpromise. In fact, at Colorcraft, we don't even warranty decks or fences because they're expected to not really last. A lot of customers actually do fences and decks every year, or at least every 2 years if you really want to maintain your house. And with our client base, which is kind of an upper end, really maintaining the whole aesthetics of the home, they're willing to invest that money and and do that. So that is the stain products at Sherwin. We got wood scapes and super paint, and then we have oil-based and water-based and the benefits of it. Next thing we're going to cover is primers. So primer is a product that we put onto bare wood before we paint it. So primer is something we use for painting. When you're dealing with stain, you don't typically need to prime because the stain itself penetrates into the bare wood. When you're painting though, paint doesn't stick to bare wood on its own. It will fail if you just put paint over a bunch of bare wood without priming it. So that's a very important thing to note, is that paint needs to have a primer coat over the bare wood before it'll adhere. So basically, and primer is actually oil-based. So the oil-based primer is adhering to the bare wood, and then the paint is adhering to the primer. The stain just directly penetrates into the bare wood, so we don't need to prime at all. Whether it's water-based stain or oil-based stain, you don't need to do it. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but it doesn't need it. At Sherwin Williams, we really have two. So when you're dealing with primer, you almost always want to go with an oil-based primer. But we've got Extreme Block here, stain blocking primer, and White Shellac primer. Both have their own little differences. I believe one of them just dries faster than the other, which isn't going to be as good of a quality, and the other one will dry slower. So honestly, if there's not a lot of priming on a house, I usually want to go with something that'll dry faster so that I can start painting quicker. But if it's a big preparation on the home, you're more liberal to, it's okay if it takes longer to dry because you're going to be priming all the way around the house. By the time you finish preparation work on one side of the house and do the other side, this one might be dry if it's within 12 hours or so. The faster drying, 4-hour primers, yeah, if there's only 5 or 6 prep spots on the home, I don't want to wait until the next day before I can do any priming. So yeah, those are the primers at Sherwin-Williams. And last thing I want to talk about is polyurethane, which is something that I've really been using a lot in the last 2 years, and it's awesome, especially for wooden soffits and that chalet log cabin kind of home. It's a protective layer. So that's what polyurethane is. It's this coat, a clear coating that protects whatever the thing is. Typically, you're protecting a stain finish. So say I put a semi-transparent stain on some nice bare wood logs, or a nice soft, the soffit of the home that has a nice wood finish, and it's got a nice stain finish on it that gives it coloring. We might want to apply a polyurethane over that stain finish to protect what's there, and then you can just apply a clear coat every year or two rather than restaining, which would require sanding everything back to bare wood if you want to do a proper restain finish, and it's way more expensive. So what I recommend that to clients is, like, once we've got the stain product that we want, say it's on, say you've got beams all over the home, nice wooden beams, and we've stained them with a really nice product or wood Scapes or something like that. Now that the color's there, we can just put on a polyurethane and protect that coating from the sun, UV rays, all that stuff. And every few years, we'll just put another coat on as the sun wears away the polyurethane clear coat versus wearing into the stain and damaging the color. Here's some examples. So the first one is the clear satin. So I guess this is a good opportunity to talk about Sheen Levels. So, no, we already kind of talked about it, which is the Sheen Levels for paint specifically is, we got flat, which means there's no glare. It's just like, it's flat. There's no shine to it. The opposite end of that spectrum would be like a car. It's like a full gloss. It's totally shiny. You do not paint a house with a full gloss finish. It would look ridiculous. So basically almost all of our paint jobs, 95% of them are going to be a flat finish on the walls. So there's no glare, and that's the benefit, is that first of all there's no glares, and it also hides imperfections. Like, you're not going to see all these little scuff marks on the house because it's just flat. Whereas if you go towards the gloss, the benefit of gloss is going to be that it's much easier to wash it, but it's going to show imperfections a lot more clearly. If there's any little ticks in it, you're going to see it from all these angles with this shiny tick marks and stuff like that. So flat is much more forgiving but less washable, versus gloss is much more washable but much less forgiving in terms of imperfections that you're going to see on the siding or the trim or whatever it is you're doing. So that's the difference. It goes flat, then it goes satin, which is a little bit of gloss, then it goes semi-gloss, which is a little bit more of a gloss, and that's usually used on like trim and doors and door frames and window frames. And then you have full gloss, which is basically almost never used in the painting exteriors of houses, except for sometimes on a rare occasion people will ask for a gloss finish on their doors. Other than that, I pretty much don't use gloss. So semi-gloss on trim and windows is basically the only thing I'll do if the client requests it. But if you're a salesperson watching this, that's a question you'll have to ask clients and paint that picture, is that, do you want the gloss on your trim boards around your home? Or vice versa, or you could also just go flat for everything on the house. I do like the washability though, especially for door frames and stuff like that, where you're going to be touching it a lot, so it's nice to be able to wash those surfaces. And I really do like the look of gloss, of a semi-gloss trim on the house. So yeah, we got clear satin. This is for polyurethane. So it's still clear, but it's got a slight bit of a shine to that clear coat. Then you've got a semi-gloss polyurethane clear coat. So it's a clear coat, and then it's got a little more of a shine. And then if you really want it to be shining, and you go with the full gloss, clear gloss. So it's that same clear coat, but it's going to have a lot more of a shine to it. And the size of these products, that's a quart, so it's 1/4 of a gallon, which is, everything else here was a gallon. What else can I share? Let's have a look. I mean, that's the basics of the Sherwin Williams exterior product line. Like I said at the start of the video, this is not a comprehensive understanding of everything. Every single one of these cans has a description of when to use it and best applications and how long you gotta wait for it to dry and how many coats, all that stuff. So it's really, this is just a prompt for you to continue learning more. And first step, so the action step that you would want to take having watched this video, is to get in touch with your local paint store sales rep, who will kind of be your guide throughout the entire painting season. So if you're doing an estimate and you have a question, call up your local rep. If you're a painter on a site or a job site manager and you're not sure about what's going to be the best primer for this surface, call up your local rep. But you want to cultivate that relationship and build your product knowledge so that you become more effective at your job and more effective for your customers. And ultimately, we can sell higher when we're more knowledgeable, more competent at what we do. So, yeah, meet your local product expert for your store. So if you're, at Colorcraft here, we're with Sherwin Williams. That doesn't mean we don't use other products from other stores ever. I use Benjamin Moore plenty. So you're going to want to build these relationships with all the sales reps from different stores, from the companies, whether it be Cloverdale Paint, Benjamin Moore, or Sherwin Williams. You want to have contacts that you can call at any time, and yeah, get the right answers to the questions that you have. Thank you for watching, and yeah, hope you have a good season. Keep learning.